Most composers, especially early on, think you need new melodies to keep music interesting. Today, Grieg shows us why that's wrong and how you can create engaging variety just by shifting orchestration. I've included a free downloadable summary linked in the description below for if you want to follow along more easily. This video is a full lesson from my course Learning from Grieg, helping composers build professional skills by studying the masters. Enjoy.
Welcome back. In our last lesson, we explored how Grieg's choice of instruments sets the stage of morning mood before a note is written. Today we're diving into something just as subtle, but just as powerful, how he creates variety without changing a single note of the melody. This is what I call a form of highly economical variation, where in this case small but also large orchestration changes keep the music feeling fresh, even when the musical ideas stay the same compositionally. So how does Grieg keep things interesting from the very start of Morning Mood? From the first bar, the melody is played by a solo flute. Underneath, the clarinets in A and bassoons provide simple, well-voiced block chords. The bassoons anchor the harmony with an open fifth. Above that, the second clarinet doubles the tonic an octave above the second bassoon, and the first clarinet completes the triad by providing us with the crucial, rich-sounding third. A quick reminder, clarinets in A sound a minor third lower than written, so just remember that while G and B are written here, the notes we actually hear are E and G sharp. In bars 5 to 8, Grieg repeats the melody exactly, but an octave lower, a small but cumulative change, as he also changes its colour by giving it to a solo first oboe. In addition to these subtle changes, the most striking change comes in the background, where instead of woodwinds underneath, the harmony moves into the strings, which play rich divided chords. These chords overlap the oboe line, cradling it closely rather than spacing everything out like before. The melody and harmony are unchanged until the final bar that closes on a G-sharp major chord. Swapping instruments and register creates an entirely new colour, providing vital refreshment to an otherwise unchanged musical idea. Throughout this passage, the accompaniment stays in block chords, but even so, this simple orchestral switch, flute and winds versus oboe and strings, is enough to make the music feel like it's developing. Let's zoom in. What exactly changes between these two versions? If we take the flute versus oboe on the melody, these instruments have very different characters. The flute sounds light and airy, especially in its high register. The oboe is more penetrating and nasal. By placing them one after the other, Grieg naturally creates contrast, even though the melody itself doesn't change. Add to that the octave shift, the oboe plays the same line one octave lower, giving us a warmer, more introspective sound. It still feels like morning, but later, calmer, as though much more of the sun is crossing over the horizon now. If we then take into account the wider texture of each of these orchestrations, there's also a difference in vertical spacing. The flute sits well above the harmony, about a tenth above the supporting winds, giving it tremendous space and clarity. However, in the following orchestration, the oboe overlaps with the string chords that accompany it. The clarity here coming from the distinct timbre differences between oboe, or woodwinds generally, and strings. So we might summarise that these two orchestrations a bit differently from one another. The flute version feels more spacious and airy. The oboe version feels more grounded, more enveloped in sound. Now that we've seen the basic trick then, swapping orchestrations to bring contrast, Watch how Grieg keeps using it again and again. Around bars 17 to 20, for example, Grieg begins breaking up the main melody into fragments. At the same time, we hear hints of a dominant pedal, leading us to that big E major arrival in bar 21. Here, with these small fragments, he returns to the same contrast. Flute and woodwinds take one fragment, then oboe and strings take another. But as things start to grow as we build back to the tutti orchestration, winds and strings blend more, oboes double in octaves, and the orchestration thickens generally. The sunrise is intensifying, daybreak is truly upon us. If we look at another, later section, we can see this use of consistent juxtaposed orchestrations again. Grieg is using the same tactic. For example, when the A section returns in E major, we hear the same theme, but this time over subtly different harmony. At 64 to 65, the melody is given to the first violins. In fact, the whole texture is provided by the string orchestra alone. However, at around bars 66 to 67, the solo first clarinet takes the melody over from the violins, introducing a new timbre. Right after that, Grieg changes things again, and this is where the juxtaposition of different orchestrations begins. Horns 1 and 2 provide a variation on the C motif, the idea that the clarinet presented just before. Horns 3 and 4 plus bassoons fill out a sustain chord, while flutes trill and oboes add decoration. The following section, bars 70 to 75, sees these two orchestrations alternate several times. First, nearly in full, and then with fragmented repetitions, clarinet and strings versus horns and woodwinds. If you compare this to the very beginning, the structure is the same, two distinct orchestrations placed side by side. Only now, as I said before, it's clarinets and strings, followed by horns and assorted woodwinds. It's the same strategy, just reimagined with different tools. Let's take a listen. So let's just take a step back for a moment. What is the big idea here? Grieg creates colour and movement not by writing new melodies, but by rotating the same themes through different instrumental combinations. That's not just elegant, it's efficient. It's like rotating a sculpture in the light. Same shape, different perspective. As composers or orchestrators, we can learn a lot from this. You don't always need new material. Sometimes just switching from flute to oboe or clarinet to horn is enough to keep the listener engaged. Grieg shows us how to be economical with our resources without sounding repetitive. In this lesson, we saw how Grieg keeps the music fresh by colouring the same melody differently, moving it between flute, oboe, clarinet and horn, while keeping a simple choral backdrop underneath. In my opinion, it's a masterclass in how less is more. In the next lesson, we'll see how Grieg orchestrates a tutti where all or most the instruments of his orchestra play together. Stay tuned.
If you'd like to review what we covered today, don't forget the lesson summary linked below. This preview was from my course, Music Composition with Grieg, where we dive deeper into Grieg's composition and orchestration techniques. Find out more below if you're interested. If you enjoyed this, I'd love for you to like and subscribe and stay tuned for more insights into the craft of great music composition.